everybody, this is Chad Jordan from Sport Clips. I'm the Director of Marketing, and this is another edition of our Hall of Fame podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a series on our podcast called Haircuts with Heart, and that series looks at some of the charitable partnerships that we have, some of the causes that we support. And so this is going to be another episode in that series because we're sitting down with one of the bigwigs, one of our favorite people at one of our favorite partners, St. Baldrick's Foundation. And in fact, before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and have her introduce herself. Tell us your name, your role, and how long your drive was to get here today. Why don't you tell us that?
I'm Robyn Raphael. I'm the Director of Corporate Relations for the St. Baldrick's Foundation. It only took me not even quite 30 minutes.
All right, okay, well, excellent.
I live in the neighborhood, so
That's excellent.
Yeah.
We are in, by the way, for those watching this on YouTube, hello. We are in the Sacramento, California area, and I needed to be up here for a couple purposes, and Robyn was gracious enough to make it, I guess, not that far of a drive, but on a Friday. I'm worried about the traffic on the way back for her, so we will try to wrap this up and not go too long. But for those of you that are familiar with St. Baldrick's, you've probably seen some of the things that we've done at Sport Clips. For those that aren't familiar with it, it's the leading, I'm going to see if I can get this right, and you're going to correct me if I'm not, the leading research fundraising organization for children's cancer. Is that?
You're on the tracks.
Okay.
You're on the tracks.
Get me back on the tracks.
Okay.
Exactly what is St. Baldrick's all about?
We are the largest private funder of childhood cancer research grants worldwide.
Okay.
We're only second to the U.S. government.
Excellent. And what Sport Clips does with St. Baldrick's is, I believe we were the first national partner with St. Baldrick's. Is that right? Back in 2016.
Correct.
I believe we pledged $1 million over the course of 3 years, which I believe we've now re-upped. There are 3 years, as our first 3 years is up, so we've re-upped. And all across the country, our stores help raise money. We do braid or shave events where people can get pledges and shave their head. And I've actually emceed a couple of those. I had a good time raising money. Also, our stylists and team members, our barbers, will pitch in and actually cut hair for those donations. So a ton of activity, and that's at the local level, and then nationally, Sport Clips itself actually does some pretty cool things. So, what exactly is your role with St. Baldrick's? At the top, you gave us your title, but can you walk me through a little bit about what you do there?
Sure. So I've been with the foundation. This month is my 5-year anniversary with the foundation, but I feel like I grew up in the foundation. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
But I am the Director of Corporate Relations, so I handle all of our corporate partners. So that's all of our partners that have corporate head shaving events, as well as our cause marketing partners, and I handle all the different partnerships there in between. I also steward our partners, make sure that they're happy, and it's mutually beneficial for both of us.
Were you've been to, I know you were at our national convention, which we call Huddle. You were there this year. Obviously, that's where I first met you. Had you been to others, or did you come to the braid or shave event that we did at our national convention years ago, or?
I didn't have the pleasure. This is my first time, and wow.
Well, yeah. What'd you think?
Wow, like super wow. Mm-hmm. I was blown away. It was really not only nicely done, but I was super impressed with everybody that we met. Mm-hmm. All of the team members. Everybody was so enthusiastic, and I would say St. Baldrick's, and they'd go, "Oh yeah, we know who you are."
It's near and dear to a lot of our hearts. Mine, particularly having had a brother that had leukemia. And your story, you've been personally touched, obviously, by childhood cancer. It led you to a life of, were you going back and forth to Washington, D.C.? Or, okay, well, can you give me a glimpse into, why you're so passionate about St. Baldrick's and childhood cancer research and all that kind of stuff?
Sure, I sure can. I didn't really know what childhood cancer was, so we're gonna flash back about 22 years ago.
Okay.
I didn't really know. I didn't really know children get cancer. I have a mom, my mom died of breast cancer when I was 10 years old, so I was acutely aware of cancer and what it does.
But it's for old people. It's for adults.
I guess, that's what I heard, and growing up too, fast forwarding, into my adult years or all throughout, I'm hearing all these cures, for breast cancer in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But I never in my wildest dream, I didn't really think about children getting cancer. My husband and myself at the time, we moved up from Southern California to the northern part of the state with our 2 young boys. Our oldest is Keaton, and our youngest is Kyle. And they're about a year and 10 months apart, so you can imagine it was
Irish twins.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called, or something.
I don't know how that happened, but we were pretty busy with the boys. New lives up here. We had some extended family that lived up here, and boys were happy. Things were great. And one day, Keaton came home from preschool. He was 4 at the time, and just said,
And Keaton's your oldest?
Yes,
Okay.
it's my oldest. Mm-hmm.
All right.
And he just said, Mom, my legs hurt. I don't feel so good.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of, as 4-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
We kind of talk them through it, watch, observe. This went on and off for a while, but I think the biggest notice for me was seeing that he started to withdraw from play. We had a big group of boys on the street, and so very fortunate that they could tag team, end up at people's houses and play. And one day I remember he went out front and the boys were playing, and he was just sitting on the grass watching. I walked over and talked to him, and he said, my legs just really hurt. So we started to take him to the pediatrician. I also noticed, in hindsight, a low-grade fever. Took him to the pediatrician. No, just put him on, Tylenol.
Right.
Watch it. That went on for about.
But no blood work or anything is getting done. Yeah.
Not really at the time. So about 3 weeks of this went, and I really just that mom's intuition,
Mm-hmm.
that gut,
Yeah.
and always trust it. All parents, please.
Mm-hmm.
Took him back in, and I said, this is just not right. A 4-year-old doesn't need to live on Tylenol and Motrin. So at that time, they had us go in to see they set us up to see an infectious disease specialist at UC Davis Cancer Center or Medical Center at the time.
So you're up here? I thought you were in Southern California.
No,
you're
we moved up here.
Okay.
We had just moved up here.
Okay.
Late 96, early 97.
Okay.
So we were up here, and so we went in to see the infectious disease specialist, and kind of wasn't sure what was going on, but definitely wanted my son to have a CAT scan. So they scheduled us for that. So we were like, okay. We go in for the CAT scan probably about a week later, and I remember it pretty vividly because I had to go in with him by myself. My husband at the time was at work, and went in. He, was calm in this big machine, and all of a sudden, probably about an hour or 2 later, a swarm of doctors kind of say, we need to talk to you. And they start asking me all kinds of questions. Have you driven through the state? They thought maybe scarlet fever. They were sort of ruling out all of these things. And the next thing I know, in hindsight, I didn't know that they knew that Keaton actually had a mass in his abdomen.
Okay.
So they said, well, we really need
So they were trying to determine where that mass could have come from or what could have caused it, not whether there was one there.
Well,
That's what the lines of questioning.
it was almost pre-question where
Uh-huh.
they were trying to figure it out, but then a specialist came in, felt his abdomen. I know all this hindsight,
Okay.
but it was so long ago. I'm trying to remember the sequence of events, but
Yeah.
they said, we need to do some more tests, and so he has to be hospitalized. And we thought, oh my gosh, so.
Mm-hmm. 4 years old?
4 years old. So this was, this is kind of what families go through. You're just thrust into it. And you're like, okay, you call your friends or family, can you bring me a bag and stay over? So we stayed the night, and the next day they did what's called a bone marrow aspir on Keaton's spine. If you can imagine a 4-year-old, they do put them out. But that was to determine what was kind of going on in the bone marrow.
This isn't a transplant. This is they're taking bone marrow.
Yeah,
out.
this is just a test. It's a bone. It's called a bone aspir, I believe. And so they're taking a sample of bone marrow to see what's going on. That very next day, Keaton's doctor, he was assigned a doctor, Dr. Rangaswamy, came in and he says, you know, I really need to talk with you. Can we go in this other private room? And so of course we had somebody stay with Keaton, and we go in this room and there's 12 medical professionals, and it was a very small room. I remember it pretty vividly, and they're all around, and I'm thinking, you know, you walk into a room and you're like, there's 12 people in here.
Right.
I don't think this is good. Proceeded to tell us that Keaton had cancer, and it's the kind of cancer, not that he said you want your child to have at all, but he says it's really not, it's not a good cancer. It's a very aggressive cancer. So he was diagnosed with neuroblastoma stage 4.
Okay.
It's known as the sneaky cancer. They don't know what causes it. They believe something goes awry in neuroblastic cells, but he was a happy, healthy baby. It can create its own blood supply. That's why they call it sneaky cancer. So it usually attaches to the adrenal gland, and his was wrapped around a kidney as well. So it's creating its own blood supply, so that's why it can infiltrate into your bone marrow before you have these symptoms. So as you can imagine, I mean, we were devastated. We were completely, you hear those words, your child has cancer, and you know, our lives pretty much just changed completely forever. We went home, and then you start telling your friends and family, right?
Yeah.
You bring I had to tell my dad, Keaton's grandpa, and just, it was heart-wrenching. We literally couldn't look at him that weekend without crying, and it was just, so then it just...
He's home too. You guys, everybody got to go. Okay, so he didn't have to stay and begin treatment right away. Or...
no, they sent us home, but literally within a week we had to be back, and it was quick and fast treatment. It was very aggressive, but we pretty much at that time set our sights and we said, we can't do this. Like, we can't live through his treatment without hope. We can't cry every time we see him. And so everybody rallied, our friends, our family, our community rallied for us, and we just went through that treatment with him. I mean, he was a trooper. He had like 7 cycles of chemotherapy, so you're talking in and out, the hospital. He had to have his tumor removed, but his right kidney went with it, and that was like a 9-hour surgery where the surgeon came out and he goes, well, I'm gonna do the best I can to save him, but he goes, it's kind of like peeling cement off cement. And we said, do what you gotta do, But he endured through all of it, and to know Keaton, I mean, he didn't have time to be sick. He was silly, and we just tried to make life, as normal as possible. And so we did all that.
I'm particularly sensitive to Kyle. What's going on with him during all of this time?
Yeah, Kyle was 3.5.
Yeah. So is he able to process what's happening yet?
Not at all.
No?
Not at all. Kyle was more of a nonverbal. He was I call him my Bam Bam. He's kind of like always action oriented. We were really grateful. The preschool that the boys went to, they were like, we are taking him. So we were really grateful for a big support system that just wrapped their arms around him. He did not know what was going on. But that doesn't mean there wasn't effects that I can talk about later.
Right.
So he was taken care of. We did 24-hour care around the clock between my husband, myself, my dad, my sister, all of that. We had a good support system. We never left Keaton alone in the hospital.
How long would he have to stay when the chemo sessions happen?
Yeah, we'd normally start with an outpatient, in the outpatient infusion room, and then go in, and I would say they lasted sometimes about a week, and then...
Did he lose his hair every time? Or?
It's sort of like when he lost his hair, then it was gone. It never came back.
Yeah.
So yeah, for him it was that, and it started to fall out in patches, and so we made kind of, I don't know, it wasn't an official St. Baldrick's because I didn't know about St. Baldrick's at the time, but Uncle sat him in the chair and we put a cape on him and we made a big deal about it. We just shaved the rest of his hair off. So.
Did he end up embracing, the fact that he was bald?
He did.
And,
Okay, so I don't know if you're familiar back in the day with VeggieTales. I
Oh,
don't know.
yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to start singing the theme song, or we'll put a link to VeggieTales?
We do. So his favorite one, and we have a video of it.
Mm.
He always used to goof around with his cousin too, who was only 9 months older. So they were like
Okay,
brothers.
yeah.
So he's in the mix of all of this too. They did a video one time, and Keaton got out his hairbrush.
Oh,
Of course, he's bald.
hairbrush song. Mhm.
And he's singing, "Where is my hairbrush?" at the top of his lungs. So
Nice.
it is quite a sight.
Good memory.
Yeah, he didn't have time to not be his silly self. So, so we did all that with that part of the treatment.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger part was yet to come. Our doctors here had a colleague. So the clinical trial available to Keaton was going to be in San Fran, but they were watching the numbers on that. And Keaton's doctor had a colleague, Dr. Lisa Dillard at Boston Children's Hospital, who was just opening a new clinical trial that was supposed to really be more promising. So Keaton was fortunate enough, what we thought would be, the life-saving treatment. We went to Boston, and we had to go in September. It was all very quick. We had to go very quickly, and he had to endure like an all-day phoresis, which is where they hook you up and they spin your stem cells.
Mm-hmm.
They look at those under a microscope and all of that because they're getting him ready for a stem cell transplant.
Which in the mid to late 90s was probably still groundbreaking, right? I mean, that was...
It really was. Think about it from a technology standpoint and
Yeah.
all of it, yes. It was foreign to us, let's say that. So we were told, okay, now go back to California, and he needs, some more treatment, and then we're gonna call you, and when it's time, you need to come. So we were called literally the week before Christmas, 97.
Wow.
And we flew to Boston, stayed at the Boston Ronald McDonald House.
Yeah. Oh, we love Ronald McDonald houses.
Amazing.
They are, yeah.
Amazing. Strangely enough, I am originally from Boston, so I have a lot of family there. So that was an amazing support system.
Mm-hmm.
But we took Kyle with us. We had to find childcare for him there.
Yeah.
So we found a home daycare center not far from the hospital.
Because you don't know how long the treatment's going to be. I mean,
no.
Yeah.
You really don't know. You're going. And one thing I think I'd point out is originally my husband, Keaton's dad, was going to stay back and work, and the nurses urged us, no, we had to go as a family.
And was it because they weren't sure how much time there was really left, or
I would say
they just thought the whole family unit for support needed to be together during this?
I would say
treatment
with what I
period?
know now, and if you're thinking back 22 years ago, I know that's going to be a novel. The internet was not the internet.
Yeah.
So I was even searching for all kinds of articles about neuroblastoma, and I couldn't. I had to go to the medical library at UC Davis but I felt then they were shielding a little bit about the severity and the survival rates. So they wanted us to be together, I think, for that reason.
Had they even given you kind of a timeline on here's what he may be looking at? If things don't progress and there isn't a recovery, he's got 3 to 6 months. They couldn't even speculate.
We didn't go there. And I'm really grateful to our medical team for not going there. They could see, they were as much focused on hope,
Right.
the best medicine, and this kid's gonna make it.
Yeah.
And that's where our heads were completely. We were not in the back of
Right.
your mind as a parent.
When you don't sleep at night, and
It was there.
Yeah.
But we fought it off pretty hard. We were very hopeful that Keaton was going to make it. So we end up getting called up, and very strangely, his first transplant was on Christmas Eve. And on Christmas Eve,
Right.
and to just say what it is, I'm thinking it's some big grandiose, and his doctor comes in and he kneels by Keaton and says, we're gonna, this is your medicine, and we're gonna do this, and hooks up a little, IV bag and puts the stem, puts the stem cells in.
It wasn't
It's
like
very
he didn't
intimate.
go under. It wasn't a 9-hour operation this
No.
time. Yeah.
No, as a matter of fact, I sat right there, and staff, and we were in isolation, by the way.
Okay.
So you know that your immune system is brought down to
Right.
0. We were in isolation, so we spent the night there. He wasn't very happy about that, as you can imagine.
On Christmas Eve.
I have
Was
to-
he worried that Santa wasn't going to be able to deliver gifts in the hospital, or?
I think it wasn't even that. I think at that point he was far away from home.
Yeah.
You know, at that
Yeah.
time he wanted to be with his friends and swim in his grandpa's pool, and he was kind of stuck in this hospital. And of course Santa did come, but
Right.
I couldn't even get him. At that moment, I couldn't. It was scary to me when I couldn't even have him be happy about Christmas.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was a moment that sticks with me.
Right.
So he had some complications with that transplant. He was slated to do 2. It was called a tandem
Mm-hmm.
transplant. So they sent us home for 10 days at Ronald McDonald House, but we still had to be in isolation. So we made the best of it. We took him out. We could go out. But we were the crazy California family that went bundled up and went in the snow in the front of Ronald McDonald House and built a snowman.
Yeah.
So yeah, they probably thought we
You're
were
the only ones out
we're
there.
the only
but
ones.
you were
Everybody's
in
looking in the
isolation.
window. Everybody's looking in the window.
Yeah.
But it's an amazing I remember that very much. And so then we had to go back in.
This is still December, or is this now into January?
We're moving into late January.
Oh,
at this
okay.
point
Oh, all
in
right.
time. Yeah.
So now you've been at the Ronald
Mid-
McDonald House for over a month.
Yeah, mid-January
Okay,
sort
about a
of.
month. Yeah.
And so we had to go back in and.
A 98 timeline, or are we now in 1998?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We're in 1998, and they had to do another stem cell transplant. But this protocol also required to show you the levels of toxicity and harshness that they did. It required a week-long, twice-a-day radiation, which is
Yeah.
and
people can't. Could you be around him during the radiation?
I could. I was
Yeah,
outside, but
okay.
then we went back to our transplant room. But yeah, I had to be gloved up,
Mhm.
and we were completely, gowns and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
I could sleep in the room, but I couldn't sleep with him.
Right.
There's a lot of rules.
There's a lot of cruel cuts with childhood cancer. That feels like one. Yeah, isolation from your baby boy who probably wants mom to hold him, and here you really can't.
Absolutely. I think about that a lot.
Yeah. You wanted nothing more. I mean, any parent, even when your kid, when you thought he just had a fever, and you're holding him, and that's of course consoling, but then to not be able to in the grips of everything that he's battling, and for your own sake, right, as a parent, just to cling on a little bit longer.
It's strange you kind of bring it up in that way, because I just thought about that the other day. I mean, I think about things, obviously.
Oh, yes.
But that particular thing is, I wished I would have just said, to heck with
Right.
what they're telling me.
I'll take the
And
risk myself.
And I did
Yeah.
crawl in there a few times because
Mhm.
I was just like, I can't. I
Right.
can't. But so he went back in with all of that, and you can imagine too. They're bringing us forms that each time that you
Yeah.
have to fill out,
Right.
and they're reading you
Yeah.
what can happen.
Yeah.
And as a parent, you feel completely helpless because
What is your choice? Like,
Right.
what are you gonna say? Forget it. That's too risky
Right,
to save
right.
my child's life.
It's-
Of course you're gonna sign it.
Of course you are. And so you've got that going on. You've got all this fear going on, and,
Right.
and you're just trying to make the best decisions, right? That you're given.
Yeah.
So he, with all of that treatment, which was very, very harsh, he started to develop some complications with his liver. So he was retaining water. There were a lot of things going on, and they kept saying, okay, well, now we're going to fix it with this, and we're going to do this.
Mhm.
And we were all together, so we would convene as a family and bring Kyle in as well, and they would play video games, and we would try to keep things really normal.
Mhm.
But we would switch off with him as well. So whoever wasn't going to be with Keaton would go back to Ronald McDonald with Kyle. We really tried to just keep it as normal as you possibly can. So it was my night to stay. I remember I came up, and the boys were playing video games, and all of a sudden I said, okay, guys, it's time for you guys to go, because we had a routine. Keaton had to have you had to bathe every day and do certain things, and I said, we're going to get him going. And just about that very same time, Keaton, just looks at me and he says, Mom, he goes, I just don't feel so good. And it was a very sudden loss. He had to call, for the nurse to come in,
Mm-hmm.
and
Could you tell just by looking at him that something
there was
was
a
turning?
was a visible sign
Yeah.
that happened, and I immediately, it was very strange. So Keaton also had a social worker that was just for him, and his name was Frank, and Keaton loved Frank. Well, Frank said he was going to come see Keaton that day, and he didn't. And at that very moment, Frank walked in the room when all of this was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I grabbed Kyle the first thing, and I ran out of the room because the nurses started to,
Right, you didn't want Kyle to see what was going on.
I didn't, and Keaton's dad stayed, and so I went out with Frank and Keaton, and tried to compose, and then say I'm going to come back in, and it's a little bit fuzzy, obviously, because I've tried to not think about it a lot, but they were able to stabilize him, but then they had to take him down to trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had to go into another little room and wait there. Meanwhile, Kyle's with Frank, and we were down there, and they just came in and said, we can't save him.
So, was he conscious when they're telling you this, or had he already kind of slipped?
Yeah.
So you don't get a final other than that time that you had spent there, but
Right.
not being able to say one last thing, hold him one last time.
No.
It was really him saying, I don't feel good, and then the actions and the ball was rolling at that point.
That was it.
And that is, what's the date? I know you know the date.
February 20th, 1998,
So you were, and this is in Boston?
in Boston.
And now you have to process, so he passes in Boston, funeral is held in California.
Yeah, had to make arrangements to
Yeah.
have him brought home.
Had you done any of that stuff in anticipation?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. No,
So,
we did not.
till the end, you're thinking, it's gonna turn around, this is gonna work, this is why we're here, signing all these forms, and
Yeah,
not giving up.
no, we didn't.
Yeah.
And then you embark on your journey,
Right.
because I thought, I have a lot of faith. That's just the person I am. But, I never thought I never thought we'd lose him, really.
Mhm.
I didn't. And that became its own, it was so difficult, as you can imagine. I mean, we came home without him.
Yeah.
And, Kyle had said
He's
to
got
me,
his bedroom at home.
yep,
That you had to deal with. And how long did you leave the room just the way it was?
I want to say a while. I want at least.
Had he and Kyle shared a room, or?
No,
Oh.
no. Actually, they had separate rooms.
Okay.
And it ended up at one point where Kyle moved into his room and stuff, but we left it for quite some time.
Mhm.
I still have boxes that haven't been gone through.
Mhm.
There's things you just put in a box, and I still have them. And I've tried a few times, but
Had he reached his 5th birthday?
he had reached his 5th birthday.
What's his birthday?
November 24th.
Okay. Oh, so
November
right, it's a
24th.
Thanksgiving baby
Yes,
on here.
yes. So we were able to have a
Okay.
really amazing
His last
birthday party.
his 5th birthday was in California.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Before he had to go to Boston.
Yeah, it was an amazing birthday party. There's a local gentleman around, or I don't know if he is anymore, but it was Music Mike, and he played the guitar. He
Mhm.
found out about Keaton, and he's like, I'm coming over and doing your birthday party.
Awesome.
It was awesome.
Shout out to Music Mike. if he's
Music
still
Mike,
around.
good people of the
Yeah.
world. That's what I will tell you is we experienced
So
many.
you had to do the unthinkable. You had to bury your own child, and walk through that bereavement process. At some point, you became an activist. It's probably the wrong word, so forgive me if that's the wrong word or offensive at all. I don't know why it would be, but something in you decided more has to be done, right? For childhood cancer research, I believe, particularly the type that Keaton had, right? So as you walk through this grieving process, does part of you go, hey, maybe it happened for a reason? maybe I have a mission to fulfill that I wouldn't have done otherwise. Is that the lights? What is the switch? And walk me through all of that to get you to where you are today.
Sure. I would say it was about 3 weeks. So we're talking into March, and I just was paralyzed.
Yeah.
Paralyzed. And I don't really know exactly what it was, but something kind of welled up in me, and I thought, this just can't. Number one, I'm mad, and I've got to do something constructive, or I'm not going to be any good to anybody. And it was just kind of like this epiphany, and I've described it like that because I started talking to people and calling, like, how are kids getting cancer? And friends and family, and I started talking about it. And I started working with UC Davis, and I said, are there any family groups? Like, what's going on? What are people doing for kids' cancer? Like, families and research. What's going on? Just educating myself. And it literally was within that month that I pretty much found out that there was really no local organization, not like there are now, there's a lot. And I said, no, I'm going to start an organization, and my goal is to help families navigate through childhood cancer. Ultimately, I wanted to see a cure for research, but really it was more safety net service for families in the Northern California area.
Had it been a full year? When did he get diagnosed?
He was diagnosed June 20th.
Right, and within 9 months.
That was it.
Okay. So not even a full year later, you've decided, I'm going to start an organization. It was a nonprofit, I assume.
Nonprofit.
So what was that, and is it may still exist?
It does.
Yeah.
Robyn Raphael Memorial.
Okay.
For neuroblastoma originally.
Right.
I
That's
wanted it to be.
right?
I wanted to be. And eventually it was Robyn Raphael Memorial. And yes, we started that. I started it in my dining room with my friends and family, and we held committee members, and people just came. It was bigger than me. And like you said, did I think it was a purpose? I don't think I thought about it very much, but along the way, I realized that I could have said no.
Yeah.
And I said yes. And it didn't mean that I wasn't, having a million different emotions. I just tried to move forward and use the skills that I had to, I've not been in nonprofit before, but my background is city government, public policy. I know how to, navigate systems and work with communities and so forth, and leadership. And that's really what I did. And we just told our story. I mean, we knocked on doors, my dad, myself, and we knocked on doors and said, we have this organization, my son died, and we're trying to do some good in the world, and will you join us? And people did.
And what is, not what was the purpose, what is the purpose of the organization? Like what were you setting out to do? Safety net, describe all of that for me.
Sure. So provide what I experienced at that time many years ago was I could not find information. I couldn't find information.
Pre-internet.
Really pre-internet. So very primal on that. So providing families, connecting with families, finding them. Starting to work with hospitals so they could find us. We could provide them
for that particular type of cancer,
all. I was really into all. I wanted to.
So networking when a family gets diagnosed with cancer. Here are 10 other families that you could contact. Is that fair to say that's part of what?
That ended up being part of it, yes.
Okay.
A community, a family, letting them know that they had support, and then also financial support. So we really did what were called family grants at the time. I believe we started off at like $250, and then that moved up into 1,000 or so forth in paying rent. Believe it or not, helping people fix cars so they can get their kids to appointments, and it really morphed. We provided educational materials locally, as well as we lost kids every year. And my dad was a carpenter, cabinet maker by trade, and I asked him to design these memory boxes, and so we started to do that. And I embarked on my grief journey. I read a lot. Books and resources became really important. People would give them to me, I would find them, and I wanted to do the same for families. So we would put those in with a card and either I couldn't really attend funerals early on, and I really, to be quite honest, didn't have a lot of contact with families. I had somebody else helping me with that. I was still going through
too raw.
I just wanted to be the girl behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go get the money and put the structure together and help people that way. But the bereavement boxes, I understand, still continue, and it obviously is.
Are they? Do you have a website for the organization?
Keaton Raphael is now Keaton's Cancer Alliance. They changed the name. I left in 2016. I just kind of said,
You did your part.
I wanted,
you did enough.
Yeah, to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
It's going strong. It's great. It's a regional organization in the Roseville area, all in Sacramento. Still helps families and hosts the head shaving events that I started, which is
cool.
how I sort of got involved.
Yeah, so we're going to go full circle here.
Full circle.
So, which came first, chicken or the head shaving with the organization came first before you knew about St. Baldrick's, or how does that all play together?
So I started Keaton's organization.
Yeah.
I became connected because I was calling everybody I could think of to tell me about childhood cancer and what's going on. I became aware of an organization in DC called Cure Search, and they were organizing, if you will, an advocacy days for the first time. It ended up being about 50 parents showing up. Most of us had lost kids to neuroblastoma specifically.
Oh wow.
And we just basically, they said, here's your t-shirt, we're gonna go on the Hill and you're gonna tell your stories to legislators. And we did. And we kind of cried our way through that. That particular group grew more and more and more, and today has an alliance of many different childhood cancer groups, of which St. Baldrick's is really a leader in that space. And I set out, I went to Washington, D.C. twice a year for probably 15 years.
Are you showing up unannounced to Capitol Hill, or have you had appointments booked? I mean, I can't imagine a congresswoman or congressman turning down someone that's lost a kid to cancer. So how does that work for anybody that wants to do something like that?
Well, we were organized. By then, we had organized, and Cure Search had organized us, and so had hired a lobbyist, and so we became more sophisticated as an advocacy group. But the goal was to get as many parents across the U.S. as we possibly could. So I served as the California team leader, so that when families would come, those of us were briefed on, what is the ask? What is it we're asking for? Our initial, I remember, was let's double the NIH budget, and we realized that didn't work. But yes, they had appointments for us, so we would go in, and it was, and that became a community that when you go there, it was so empowering. I've always felt like this is action, and so
making a difference. This is
grassroots going and changing, and that's where I met the founders of St. Baldrick. So I was asked
because they were doing the same thing, or they were part of the rest of the committee, or lobbyists, or
well, they were invited. So I don't know the real how they got there, but I was invited to a banquet where they were being honored because these 3 Irish reinsurance executives were shaving heads and raising money for kids' cancer, right? So it was fun, and I had gone with my mother-in-law that year, and we were just enjoying it, and we're like, oh, this is great. And so we go back. We were going to get a glass of wine, so we go back to there, and this gentleman walks up to me and he goes, hi. I said, I'm Enda McDonald. And he was one of the founders. And I said, hi, Robyn Raphael, where are you from? And chit-chat. And he goes, you have really nice hair. And I said, I like my hair. And he said, well, would you consider shaving your head?
Oh, there's the other shoe.
I'm like, well, I said, well, I have an organization back home, and I do family services, but I love research. Like, research is the end game for me. And he says, well, I really think you need to host a head shaving event and shave your head. I don't know why. I swear to you, I only had one glass of wine. My mother-in-law was there right with me. But he ends up closing me on a cocktail napkin that I have
you
to this day.
confirmed that you were going to do it.
That I was
okay.
going to go home to Sacramento, Roseville, California. I was going to raise $30,000 and shave my head. So I committed to that, and then the next morning at breakfast at our advocacy group of about 200 parents, somebody gets up and announces that I'm doing this.
Oh,
and now I'm like,
you're trapped. Yeah,
and, you know, go. Chad, I'm not gonna pretend like that. A lot of men go into this and they're like, I'm gonna do this. Mm-hmm. I was a bit drug in there, and I was kind of like, what did I do? Mm-hmm. And I admit it wholeheartedly. But after
you did it, right?
I did it. Okay. But after I thought about it, and I came back home, and I think people just felt sorry for me. So they're like, all right, we're going to give her money. I'll join you, whatever.
What year is this?
We are in, I'm in 2003.
Okay, so this is even, you don't have the benefit of a Facebook event that you can put out there, which is, it's not cheating. It's wonderful, but that spreads the message so quickly.
Yes.
So you're literally having to hit people
I'm going to my Chamber of Commerce. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget that. When I announced it at the Chamber of Commerce, you should have seen everybody's face.
Because it was not a common thing.
Oh, no.
Not like it, not it's still not common, but
right.
It's at least heard of now. It was unheard of back then.
So I said I was going to do it. My heart really was into it when I just started getting
at that point. You had counted the hair lost. You're like, this is gone.
I'm doing it.
So I gotta at least get the $30,000 out of it.
Yep.
So.
And we did it. We only had, I want to say at that time, I don't know if we had 5 weeks, maybe.
Did you make it? Was it like a newsworthy event? Did you tell me about it?
It was, well, we had to find a place. So we found this great little coffee shop. I knew the owners, and they're like, you do it here, do it here. It ended up raining that day, so they we did
in
it
California?
outside. Yeah, I know.
That?
In March. Sometimes it rains
in
March. So they put up this tarp, and I remember it was windy and all this, but the news crew came out, we kind of did it all as a family, as a matter of fact. And we had another cancer family of a mom of, at the time, he's still a survivor of the same cancer as Keaton. Yeah.
And was he diagnosed around the same age as when Keaton was, or was he older?
He was, but he didn't go through the same kind of treatment. And there's really I do know a couple of survivors, and there's no real, there's no answer. But his mom shaved with me that year, and I remember it. It was amazing, and it was really the best thing I've ever done in my life. It just was, It just was meaningful and the best thing ever.
And have you done it since?
I have not.
Okay, so once in a lifetime is enough.
I said I might do it again, and I do have colleagues.
I'm not putting you on blast on this podcast. There's no cocktail napkin. You're not going to have to commit to it.
There's only Sour Patch.
Yeah, you got some snacks here, but no, I'm only asking because did you participate in what you started? Did you participate in other events that?
As a matter of fact, I started 3 other events that morphed into like 7 events that are just. There's many events up here now, and so it really was that ripple effect of St. Baldrick's in Northern California, and I think all those efforts. I don't know if I had to throw out a number. It's millions.
Yeah.
It's
millions. And for me, that's one of the reasons I wanted to capture on a podcast your story, not from start to finish, because you're not finished, but just to show the progression. And then how it started. And $30,000 is not chump change. That's a lot of money, but that was just the beginning of now, like you said, probably millions of dollars. And so, for any stylist that might be listening or watching to this, or any team leader, or our franchisees who are maybe on the fence about participating in a St. Baldrick's event, just think. I know the one locally for us around the Santa Barbara County area. The impact that's had in 5 or 6 years running, and how much has been raised just from one. It really came from one. She was on my daughter's soccer team, Lexi Brown, who passed away, but when she started with her when she was still alive, and what it's become now. And it started with one head shaving event, and now it's a full-on big deal.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I know there's more.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just want to interject in there too, and I know head shaving sometimes isn't for everybody. I get it.
No, you're talking to one that's.
So yeah, good.
No, well, thank you for that. You don't have to whisper it. You can shout out. It says
What if we dye
haircut.
it green?
No, yeah.
We'll do it in the huddle.
I'm happily married, and I want to continue to be
Okay.
that way.
I don't want to upset them.
Yeah, so I can continue to do podcasts about head shaving events or whatever. But yeah, like you said, head shaving is not the end all be all.
If it isn't, and I just want to do a little plug here because I think we kind of my colleague Kelsey and I introduced this at the huddle. POS system, it's in BAM. I mean, September's National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and you know what? Since we sort of announced that, we've had many team members sign up, and it's thousands.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy. It's a lot, and you can get your customers involved. So the POS is really, I don't want to not.
So Salon Ultimate is what you're talking about, and where there's a question, I think, do you want to donate to St. Baldrick? So
Yes.
the client can, while he's paying
Yep.
for his haircut, his keeping his hair, but losing some hair, but you still having hair to walk out with, can give towards St. Baldrick's.
There's a St. Baldrick's button. You just have to say, do a campaign whenever you want to. And, September is coming up. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
National Childhood Cancer.
We're definitely going to push that. And I think this is the first year that we've done it, where we're going to try all of September to do it. So we'll make sure we get all those details out.
Yeah.
And I know I'm running over your time, so I have a list of 10 questions that are not going to be. They're going to be mostly lighthearted, but there's really one important question, and you mentioned it earlier before I get to the 10, and you had mentioned your grief journey, and I know that every parent that's had to walk through bearing a child, whether it was an accident or whether it was cancer, disease, or something that took the child, has had to walk that journey out, and it's all differently. But you mentioned some things that helped you along the way, and obviously starting the foundation and the organization and doing that was a big part of it. But what do you think for you? Not that you'll ever, a day will never go by where you don't think about Keaton. But what do you think for you was the biggest, whether it was push in the right direction or helping the grieving process heal a little bit better? What do you think was for you the thing that you would maybe recommend to other, maybe moms or other parents that are dealing with this?
Gosh, there's so much. But for me, and everybody's
Yeah,
journey
that's
is
what I'm
different.
saying. What was it for you?
For me, it's a combination. It's kind of doing my own spiritual journey and figuring it out from my perspective and how I can live with this.
Because I bet what you thought 23 years ago was different than what you thought 22 years ago, and different than what you think now.
Right.
So that's, I'm sure, yeah.
I think I went to counseling. It's a big thing. I'm a believer in it.
Yeah.
It helped me sort through a lot. It helped me not blame myself. It helped me, all the things that parents go through.
Yeah.
I think having a support system, and I know that's easier said than done, because even family sometimes can't be there for you in this time.
Yeah.
And that's a reality, and that's very, that's the last thing you need, right? You're already grieving, and then,
right.
But it happens. Finding those support systems, and then and the people who understand you and also understand that there's no right way to do this, and let you be you, and just support you in that journey. And if there are people that aren't, I recommend you make some space from them, because it's the toughest thing in my life I've ever done. And I also want to give parents hope that I'm sitting here today. I never would have thought I'd be sitting here. I never thought I would find joy in my life again.
Yeah.
And giving yourself permission to have that joy, it is not easy. I'm not going to say you get to the other side of the river.
Yeah.
I look at it as a journey of like stepping stones, and find those people who can take you forward. And when you take those steps back, you're just moving forward. Find the way that works for you. that's kind of, I don't know if I answered
No,
your
you
question.
did. Yeah, I love it. You know, it's a little bit like, you know, so my brother died of leukemia, so I grew up in a home. I was 9, he was 6. I grew up in a home with grieving parents who, I don't know, I know a day doesn't go by where they don't miss Ryan, my brother. But for us, who my parents are now versus what they were when I was a kid and a teenager, there, like you said, there is joy, whether it's on the other side or in the middle of the river that you're wading through to try to get to the other side. There's hope for, not every day will be February 20th, am I getting the day right? But February 20th of every year I know is tough, right?
Yeah.
Probably Christmas time for you guys because of all that. But I love being able to sit and have conversations with people that are on this side of it as well. So I've loved every minute, even though some of this has been painful, what you've talked about. I love getting to kind of unpack the story of a mover and a shaker in the St. Baldrick's Foundation world and childhood cancer research world and all that you've done. So thank you first for that. You know, before I ask your 10 questions, I'm going to present you with those that are watching on YouTube. You can see, I know you were at Huddle. Hopefully you got to hear Brittany Fitzgerald's speech. She's one of our coaches in the Texas region. And her motto is do it with passion or don't do it at all. I'm going to give that to you because I feel like you're passionate and you deserve this shirt.
Aww.
Not every guest gets one of these, but this is going to be for you. So
I feel special.
You are special.
That's awesome. I love it.
So can I ask you the 10 questions and then you can go fight the traffic and get home?
Yes.
Okay. Question number 1. If you had one superpower, what would you hope it would be? You could only have one superpower.
This is a really hard question.
You want me to start with an easier one and come back to that one?
No.
Okay. I thought that might be the easiest one, just so you know.
I want to save people.
You want to save people?
I want to
Great.
save people.
Okay. You want to save? I mean, rush into burning bill, like all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. Indestructibility.
Yes.
All right. That way you can go save people. All right. Number 2. What is your personal motto?
I have many.
Okay.
But I like
Good.
live, love, laugh.
Okay. Live, love, laugh. I love it. I know you're from Boston, you said, and you live in California, but if you could choose anywhere else in the world to live that you've never lived before, where else in the world would that be?
Gosh, I'm trying to think of it in the country. Well,
Yeah, anywhere.
well, I'm going to Greece in September,
Okay.
so it might be
All
there.
right, Greece. I love Greece. If you could meet one celebrity, who would it be? We're going to put out good vibes, so just in case it happens, you'll be able to credit this podcast.
All right. Well, he's also my celebrity crush, so
Okay.
Jason Statham.
Okay, all right. So Fast and Furious, you're going to be watching this new movie that's coming out, all right. Which words or phrases do you most often overuse? I'm sorry? Okay.
It's a bad habit, I was told. I need to stop.
All right. Hey, I don't think you said it too much today, so you're working on your habit. What sound or noise do you love?
Children laughing.
Like that. What sound or noise do you hate?
Children screaming.
Ah, great. I was either crying or screaming. Okay, perfect. The yin and the yang there. All right. This is a special question I wrote just for you. That's different than no other podcast guest has got this question, but I was thinking about you and your life. When they make a movie on the story of your life, who do you want to play the lead character? Which actress?
That is a tough question. People had told me that I look like Sherry O'Terry.
Sherry O'Terry, where's she from?
She was from Saturday Night Live, but I know that that's not right.
Okay, I don't know which one she is.
It was a while ago.
Okay, do you want her to be the lead character?
No, I want someone, no,
Someone like a Julia Roberts or...
Yeah, she has to be blonde though. So
Okay.
I'm bad with actresses.
She's pulled that off before.
Yeah.
Emma Stone could probably pull it off.
What about, Goldie Hawn's daughter. What's Goldie Hawn's daughter?
If you wouldn't ask me, I could have told you.
I know.
Yeah. So we'll
I'm
just
sorry,
put
I'm the
Goldie Hawn's
celebrity.
daughter, who was in.
Overboard? Was it? No.
She was in Overboard. I'm trying to think. There's one of these movies, 10 Things. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Yes, that's
my
it.
wife
That's
does
her.
that
I
movie.
want her.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I love her.
Okay. Next one. But this is, I think, going to be pretty obvious if we re-listen to this podcast. What is your greatest achievement?
Well, my kids
Okay.
are my greatest achievement.
All right. I like that. Yeah.
They are.
Last question. If heaven indeed exists, what do you hope to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done.
Well done. Great. How about well done and hey, Keaton, come here.
Yeah.
I like
Absolutely.
that. Yeah. This has been amazing. What a story. Thank you so much for carving out some time to share your life with us and what you're up to now. And this is why, I want to document stuff like this for Sport Clips, because what we're doing with St. Baldrick's, we're just scratching the surface so far of the limit and the potential that this partnership has. And I hope that as our listeners have heard your story today and been encouraged by you, that they think, hey, we're not going to let this be for naught. We're going to go do some great things for St. Baldrick's, Brave the Shave events, maybe not shave their own heads, but raise monies, do this stuff with Salon Ultimate and the POS system for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month coming up in September. But just really get involved. That's what our aim is here. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chad.
All right, appreciate you. Bye, everybody. Hope you'll listen next time. Thanks so much. All right.
Oh my God.
You did it.
You're awesome.
You were
I'm
great.
sorry if I blubbered my whole way through.
You did not blubber at all. I mean that's